Civil liberties, human rights, democracy itself, are they under threat in Britain?
From being a very tolerant country, we've now become one of the countries that is hostile to human rights.
The United Kingdom sees itself as a champion of democracy. But some feel that liberties have been taken too far, that they are being abused in new and dangerous ways, and that new laws need to protect public life.
Yesterday's laws are simply not fit for purpose.
What's happening to liberal Britain? How free and fair is Britain today? The right to protest, the right to strike, and the right to asylum are all in the spotlight. This is Millicent Fawcett, the campaigner for women's political rights in the UK. She's honoured here with a statue right in front of Parliament for the role that she played in Britain's political history. The movement that she led, the suffragettes, eventually secured the right for women to vote in the UK. They chained themselves to government buildings, smashed windows, went on hunger strike, and disrupted the Grand National Horse Race. At the time, they were vilified as hysterical and criminal. Some went to jail. Today, they're heroes. Climate campaigners in Britain are using similar disruptive techniques. They've blocked traffic, chained themselves to bridges and glued themselves to roads. They cause traffic jams and attract often hostile headlines. Policing them is expensive and takes officers away from other work. Polls show a majority of Britons don't agree with those protests.
Nobody civilised would dream of stopping someone from getting to work or from letting children go to school, Madam Deputy Speaker, let alone blocking ambulances. And I'm afraid we have seen all these examples all too frequently. So we do not make policy, Madam Deputy Speaker, as a country through mob rule, through disruption in the way in which we have seen, Madam Deputy Speaker. No democracy can do that. No democracy needs to do that.
It's now a criminal offence for people to attach themselves to others or buildings or infrastructure. The penalties can include unlimited fines or up to 10 years in prison for those convicted of causing a public nuisance. According to opinion polls, the public broadly backs the new criminalisation of some forms of protest. But does that justify curtailing a fundamental human right? The government has given the police wide-ranging powers to stop protesters, even before they've done anything. These measures go much further than those in other European countries.
Protest has driven and moved so many important fundamental changes to democracy. For this reason, the European Court of Human Rights, along with the United Nations and international bodies globally, emphasize the fundamental importance of the right to protest as essential, as fundamental in any democratic society.
A meeting of conservative politicians and thinkers in London has the right to free speech on the agenda.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
A former government minister opens the conference.
It's a great honour for me to be.
But activists target the gathering, saying those attending are trying to move Britain away from its liberal tradition.
I would like to draw your attention to a few characteristics of fascism.
Well, thank you very much.
Protesters say laws introduced just a few weeks earlier have already led to arrests, which they say were unjustified.
Fellows had to leave, but we believe.
Those attending the conference say they are not limiting freedoms.
We believe in freedom of speech.
We live in a representative democracy. We have, everybody has the vote, you can vote at the ballot box, you can take part in local politics, you can stand for election. There are many, many ways of expressing your views. We have freedom of speech, but that doesn't mean you have unqualified right to stop other people going about their business.
We're not expecting to move the people inside the conference. We're here for those who are going to see it on social media, who are going to hear about it through the news, and build a mass movement of people who support us.
It's important to use this right. A right of free speech does nothing if nobody exercises it. That's what we were doing today.
International organisations like Human Rights Watch say the UK's human rights record is in significant decline.
No one asked you to come No one asked you to come here and interrupt.
Those attending the conference maintain the UK is still a free and fair country.
This is not fascism, I'm not a fascist.
Index on Censorship, a London-based freedom of expression group, ranked countries on their openness. The UK is considered only partially open, worse than other Western European countries.
A large number of international organizations, the most recently being the United Nations, which issued a very rare rebuke of the United Kingdom for this quite anti-protest law. It puts the UK out of step with a majority of equivalent nations globally.
Britain is seen as the birthplace of trade unionism and workers' rights. It was here in London stocks that workers went on strike in 1889, demanding a minimum rate of pay. Huge peaceful marches caught the attention and sympathies of many across the country. The dispute led to a pay rise and cemented trade unions as part of industrial Britain. Unions were long a significant force, but since the 1980s, they've seen governments reduce their power. Today, unions say a new proposed law would threaten the right to strike. It comes after nurses and other public service workers refuse to work. The government says that particularly in the health service, these strikes can cost people's lives.
The public has had enough of the constant and most unwelcome, frankly dangerous disruptions to their lives.
The minimum strikes bill introduces a power of government to set the minimum service level. This is a level of service or a level of functionality that has to be met in order for the strike to be lawful. So, for example, they could say if junior doctors want to go on strike, then at least 30% or 50% of those doctors still have to show up for work even during the strike.
If they fail to do so, even if their strike is legal, they could be sacked. Unions are threatening more strike action, not less. Rising inflation, they argue, has pushed down their members' real wages.
Workers can't keep going to work and not being able to feed their families and themselves. That is morally wrong.
We've seen hundreds of thousands of people in the last few weeks and months take the very difficult decision to take strike action. I mean, these are workers who are going to lose pay, who can't deliver the services that they're proud to deliver. And the government, rather than listening to those workers and trying to understand why they're going on strike, just want to make it harder for them to take that strike action. And what this legislation would effectively mean is that people could be sacked for exercising that democratic right to strike. And if you can be sacked for going on strike, there is no effective right to strike.
Rail strikes have been particularly visible. Each week of a full strike costs the economy hundreds of millions of pounds. And they are disruptive, preventing people from getting to work on time. The new laws will restrict 1 in 5 workers' rights to strike, say unions. Is that a good idea?
It seems to have just gone on and on and on, so it causes a lot of disruption, so there needs to be some level of service.
I understand that they must have a lot of concerns and the need to strike, but obviously it affects a lot of people.
It almost takes away the purpose of them striking if not everyone can strike at once, so might not have the same impact of what I guess the unions are looking for, but in terms of disruption to the public, selfishly I think it's a good idea.
So there is public support, but some business organizations are asking the government to rethink. They say unions should be involved.
Oh, I think it has to be a negotiation. The minimum service level enshrined in law actually must be agreed by everyone involved, which is why it's got to be done in a period of calm and has got to be conducted in a calm way. We in business know that a bad law created by the force of circumstances just won't gather public support in the future. We want laws that are going to work, not ones that sound good.
Government, employers and unions in other European countries work together on minimum service levels. In Britain, unions will be left out. The UK Parliament's own Joint Committee on Human Rights warns this would breach human rights law.
When this becomes law, and if it is introduced in a manner quite draconian, For example, if a minister introduced a minimum service level of 100% of hospitals working or 100% of trains running, essentially removing the effect of the right to strike, we could see cases going up to the European Court of Human Rights.
This statue at Liverpool Street Station in the heart of London harks back to a chapter that many in Britain are proud of. It shows Jewish children rescued from Nazi territory just before World War II. The British government allowed nearly 10,000 such children to come here after various organizations arranged for their stay. Today, people fleeing persecution often arrive on small boats, having crossed the English Channel from France. The government say they are coming illegally and are pledging to stop them.
The British public know that border security is national security, that illegal migration makes us all less safe.
Last year, over 45,000 people, more than ever, made the dangerous journey via the English Channel. 5 are known to have died. The government says one of the reasons they want to stop the crossings is to save lives. The illegal migration bill aims to stop them by preventing anyone who arrives that way from applying for asylum, whether they have a case or not. They'll be deported, either back home or to a safe third country.
The law is an attempt to disincentivize, to stop this migration by essentially saying you will never get refugee status and you will never get UK citizenship if you enter through an irregular route.
We've seen a 500% increase in small boats crossings in 2 years. And this, Mr. Speaker, is the crucial point of this bill. They will not stop coming here until the world knows that if you enter Britain illegally, you will be detained and swiftly removed.
The government is unapologetic. It's a policy of deterrence, and it's what people want, they argue.
For a government not to respond to waves of illegal migrants breaching our borders would be to betray the will of the people we were elected to serve.
But refugee organisations say many have good reason to come to the UK and point out there are few legal routes of entry. They say the new laws would effectively ban asylum to many who would be entitled to it. The Refugee Council's figures suggest that over 60% of those who arrived on small boats in 2022 had a legal right to asylum. Alfred Dubbs was one of those Jewish children who arrived at Liverpool Street Station fleeing the Nazis. He spent much of his life fighting for the rights of refugees, particularly children. Now he's a member of the House of Lords. There he leads opposition to the proposed new laws.
I think it's a very nasty bit of legislation. If they're fleeing from persecution, from war, from the threat of torture, then they have, under United Nations rules, the right to claim asylum, and the government has no right to do that.
The government argues the refugees can claim asylum, but not in Britain. They struck a deal with the Central African state of Rwanda to send asylum seekers there. But the first flight to Rwanda was cancelled for legal reasons. Pro-migrant organisations and the government are still tied up in battles about whether the scheme is lawful.
The government have said that it is not in violation of the Refugee Convention, but a very large number of charities that work with refugees, in addition to a large number of NGOs, of international organizations, the EU, the UN, have all come out and voiced their deep concern with this, as essentially removing any capacity for a refugee to get refugee status in the United Kingdom.
I think it matters a great deal because it determines the sort of country we are, and it determines the values we have, and I don't want to support any government that doesn't protect the human rights of individuals.
Until now, Britain has had a very good track record when it comes to human rights, but I wonder whether this will hold true in the future. The right to protest, the right to strike, the right to asylum are all fundamental to a democratic society. They've resulted in things now considered essential: votes for women, fair pay, saving people from dictators. People might not like having their lives disrupted by strikes and protests, and they might want to restrict who comes into the country. But polls show that some of the protesters' aims, such as stopping new oil and gas exploration, are actually backed by many people. Most want to pay nurses fairly, and numerous polls show that the British public has great sympathy towards refugees. The UK government is writing laws that give it huge powers to limit democratic rights. Some of these laws might be popular at the moment, but it looks like fundamental rights are being taken away in a hurry. And once they're taken away, it might be difficult to get them back. And that could stop ordinary people from changing things in the future.